Welcome to Old Classic Car, and here a series of roadside shots seen in New Zealand in the late 1970s and into the mid 1980s. Thank you very much to Peter Ward for this collection of photographs. And to begin, a very interesting old Hillman Minx. Now, looking at this one, I think it's probably just post-war, about 1947 or thereabouts, but I don't recognise that upper part of the front grille at all. I think someone has probably modified that. Next up in this collection of New Zealand photographs, we've got a great lineup of old cars here. Many of them British, some of them not. It's an interesting American car just in the background there. In the foreground we've got a Singer Gazelle. What's that, a Hillman Super Minx alongside it, and then an Austin Cambridge. All sorts of interesting old cars in that one. Next up, there's a closer look at that American car that was in the background. What car is that? I thought it may be a Plymouth or a Dodge, something like that, late 1930s. But I'm not entirely sure. The car alongside it is one of the E3 series BMWs. That's a 3-litre S, I think, from the mid-1970s. Next up, another car park photograph, and here we've got a lovely Singer Gazelle with a Morris Minor Traveller alongside it, and just behind, in the background there, is a very rare car. That's a Hillman Minx estate car, a 4-door estate, not a Husky, but that's a Minx estate. Very rare sight indeed now. Bit of a fuzzy photo, but it's a rare subject, taking that from inside another car, and that is I think a Ford Model A Roadster pickup. You've got the folding roof over the driver and passenger, and the pickup bed at the back. Interesting combination, you do see those quite often in Australia and New Zealand. There's a slice of old Britain for you, an Austin A30, a 2-door Austin A30 saloon. These were powered by the little 803cc BMC A-Series engine. This one's got extra flashing indicators fitted at the front and is definitely showing its age. This photo was taken in 1979. Now, an interesting lineup of old Fords. There's a Mark IV Cortina on the left there. And we also have in front of that an Anglia, an E4948 Anglia, an E493A Prefect, an E93A Prefect, and an E04A Anglia. Quite an interesting lineup. There's one that was photographed on the road as such. We've got, I think this is a Chevrolet Master, about 1937. You can also see a little Honda Civic on the right hand side there, and another Datsun alongside that. Carrying on with these New Zealand photos, we've got a great pair here. We've got a Morris J or JB van on the left hand side there, and slowly disappearing in the undergrowth on the right hand side, or so it appears, is a late 20s 1928 or 29 Ford Model A Roadster, a 2-door Roadster. Very nice indeed. Back to British cars again, seen here in New Zealand, and we've got an A40 or an A50 Cambridge. I'm not quite sure which one that is, 1200cc or 1500cc, depending on which one it is. Quite an unusual two-tone colour scheme that's been applied to this car. Back to car parks, and we've got a great Morris Isis here. This is a Morris Isis Series 2. These were built from 1956 to 1958. They've got a straight 6 engine, 2.6 litres, auto and manual versions were available. About 90 brake horsepower thereabouts these produced. Sits quite high at the front, this one. Got a Rover P4 now. These were built all the way from 1949 through to 64. I think this is a fairly early one, about 1952. 1953 on, they had little side lights on the top of the wings, but this one hasn't got that. So I think this is probably a 6-cylinder Rover 75, dating to 1952. Bit of an action shot here. We've got 2 British classics here on the roads of New Zealand. We've got a Mark II Ford Zephyr driving along at speed, a very long radio aerial on this particular car, and parked up what looks to be one of the early Farina Morris Oxfords. Great stuff. I wonder if either of those survive. Now we've got a Morris Minor MM. This would be, what, about 1949, 1950, somewhere like that for this particular car. Now, I wonder if it had actually been left there a long time or if it was just parked up visiting someone. I can't really tell in this photo how derelict or not this particular car is, but either way, that's quite a rare sight. And going back to pre-war cars in New Zealand, this is a great old photo, a side-on view of a Series 2 Morris 8 2-door saloon. Like I say, thanks to Peter Ward for all the photographs in this particular video. He sent me all sorts of different photos over. and he agreed to me using them in these videos, and that's just fantastic. Now here's an oddball one. It appears to be a Morris Series 2 van based on the 1950s Morris Oxford. And in fact, I think the red primer panels are probably from a Morris Oxford, looking at the badge on the front wing there. But the vans were never badged up as Oxfords. This one has been converted into a camper. Now, bit of Australian history here. We've got a Holden FB. This photo was taken in the mid-1980s, and the car is a 1960 or 61 Holden FB special sedan. 2.3 inline 6 under the bonnet of that particular car. Good old bit of BMC here. We've got a Wolseley 6110, the big 6-cylinder engine car. This one looks to be in pretty good condition. This photo again was taken in the 1980s on one of several visits that Peter made to New Zealand. Another general photo here. We've got a couple of British classics in the middle there, but on the left hand side is that a Mini Clubman Estate, one of the two, but it looks like it's got exterior door hinges, so I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Ah, nice old Hillman Minx here from the mid-1950s, about 1955 or 56. It was around about that time that they switched from the side valve engine to the overhead valve engine. Very similar styling on both cars, but the early ones were side valve powered. I'm not sure if this is one of those, but either way, really smart little car. Here's a car that I used to have. I used to have one of these, a 49. Mine, it's an Austin A40 Devon. This one was photographed in 1979. They were built from 1947 through to 52 before the Somerset came along. This one looks fairly well used, original paint. Fair bit of patina going on there, but is it still around? Now here's a weird one. I actually saw a Herald like this at Tatton Park Classic Car Show about 20 years ago. Someone had converted it into a pickup truck. Quite a neat job. They've taken the saloon roof and shortened it down and made a pickup bed out of the back end. Very smart indeed. Another British classic here. Now, it's not one of the Australian bodied cars, which I thought it might be, because I'm not sure if they ended up in New Zealand at all, but this is an English E493A Ford Prefect, a little 10-horse car engine, 1172cc, same as the car sold here. Bright two-tone paint job. Now, we've got a green Ford here. This photo also dates to 1979, as many of these pictures do. That's a 1947 or early 1948 Ford. Very cool car, two-door coupe. There's a Mark I Cortina or a console on the left-hand side there. Then the street scene, and the little car there, the maroon and black car, is an Austin 8, I believe. There's quite a few interesting cars there. We've got a Fintail Mercedes on the right and a Honda Accord behind that, and a little Mazda, is that a Mazda 323 perhaps behind the Austin? What a great scene that is. A few more British classics here, rubbing shoulders with some contemporary Japanese cars. We've got a pair of Morris Minors there. They're both showing the old clap hand style of wipers. There's a Datsun just alongside the blue Minor. In the background, there's a little Austin A30. It looks like it's been receiving a bit of TLC to its paintwork. Here's an interesting shot. This, I think, is a PA Velox, the Vauxhall Velox PA series. That wraparound rear screen, the PA was actually introduced in 1957, but the wraparound rear screen was introduced in October of 1959. These were actually assembled at GM's plant in New Zealand. There's a great old photo, one of the big Triumphs. This is one of the 2.5 litre cars, and this isn't too far from Horopito Motors, the huge scrapyard that's still there to this day. And by now I should have uploaded a series of photographs all about this particular scrapyard, so I'd well recommend looking that one out. I'll include a link at the end of this video. A couple of photos now of a lovely old E-Series Vauxhall. This is a Cresta, so it's a 6-cylinder car. It appears to be missing its front bumper for some reason. Maybe it's had a little bit of an incident. This was seen in 1979, and like the PA that we saw before, these were assembled at GM's plant in Petone, I believe. Apologies for the pronunciation. And they made around about 840 E-Series cars in 1956, which is the approximate date of this particular car here. Like I say, the Crestas were 6-cylinder powered. Mighty old Citroen here, one of the Citroen Traction Avant, and it's a right-hand drive car like those that were built here in the UK at Slough right-hand drive. The chevrons on the grille are behind the vertical grille slats, whereas on the French-built cars the chevrons are on the outside. So that's the difference. Now, I think this is probably at Rover P4 Motors, and there's a great Austin A40 pickup. I hope that one survived. That looks just like a fascinating place to have a route around. This was in 1979. But like I say, there's a separate video already on the channel just of photographs of this fascinating yard, so I really recommend having a look at that. A few interesting cars here. I'm not quite sure what that on the right is. CNG is that sort of compressed natural gas, maybe it's LPG powered. But the car in the middle is a lovely old Humber Hawk of about 1955 or 56 thereabouts. Whereas the car on the left, is that I'm not sure, Mitsubishi, a Colt, something or other. Now to a used car lot, and we've got a couple of gems here. We've got a Citroen ID19 on the left, and a good old British Humber Super Snipe on the right hand side. This apparently was an emporium called Gracious Motors. If you know anything more about that particular company, please let me know in the comments. Another street side view here from 1979 in New Zealand. A stunning little Austin A40 pickup. This has got a non-standard and non-factory pickup body on the back. This is a fairly early one because it's got the same Mazak silver shiny grille as the A40 Devon's had. The later vans and pickups had a painted grille. Now for a Morris, and we have a very nice little Morris Oxford. This is sort of mid-1950s, about 55, 56 or thereabouts. It's got one of those wind deflectors on the front door. You don't see those too often. And the sun visor, the exterior sun visor, which you do see quite regularly on cars over in that neck of the woods. Here's another street scene, some traffic lights I think, and a fantastic standard Vanguard. It's a Phase 3 Vanguard 6. So not just any standard Vanguard Phase 3, but one of the 6-cylinder cars. What a beauty that is. Is it still around? Is there any way of looking up these registration numbers now to see if any of these cars are still about? Another slice of Britain here in distant lands. It's a Daimler. This is a Daimler Conquest, one of the 2.4 litre 6-cylinder powered cars. These are pre-selected gearbox, very upmarket car, sort of medium-sized car if you like. These were built from 1953 to 58. That photo dates to 1979. Got another one of the Citroen Traction Avant, or the Light 15s here. Like I say, these were probably assembled locally in New Zealand, I would have thought. But again, it's a beautiful looking car, so surely that's still around somewhere. You know, accidents apart, there's every chance that car's still around somewhere. And how about this one? Another classic British car here over in New Zealand. We've got a rear view of a Riley RM. Looks like someone's bolted some extra stop tail lamps on the back end there. Not exactly integrated with the rest of the design, but it's quite a common upgrade back in the day. Now I've got a bit of Americana here. This is a 1951 four-door Chevrolet. I think it's a Chevrolet Fleetline sedan. It's a four-door saloon. And judging off photos I've seen elsewhere of 1951 Chevys, I think this is the Fleetline model. But I could be wrong, please let me know. Another great scene here outside a Shell petrol station, a side view of a fantastic Phase 3, or rather the Vignale revised version of the Phase 3 Vanguard Estate. Two-tone, what a beauty that is, I do like those a lot. And in the foreground we've got a rare GT6 Mark II. The Mark II is the only one of the GT6s with louvers on the front wings. A couple of classic Ford Prefect here. Now we've got a black E493A on the left hand side. And to the right, an earlier car. Now, at first I thought it was an E93A, but I think this is one of the Australian-built A53As, which was the Australian equivalent of our E93A. Anyway, another used car dealer here, or classic car dealer. Nice Morris on the left, and you can just see a Volvo Amazon peeking in on the very far left-hand side. It's an early one with those red hubcaps. The car on the right is one of the old shoebox Fords of the early 1950s. Another great car park scene here. There's a Datsun 120Y, one of the fastback 120Ys just on the right there. And a nice early Phase 1 standard Vanguard with a narrow slatted grille. The Phase 1A had a chunkier grille. There's a little Hillman imp alongside that. And not quite sure what the car alongside is. Someone will know. Anyway, back to British cars, and we've got a Vauxhall Victor F-Type. And this is a fairly early example of the breed, because you can see those holes in the rear bumper ends. That's where the exhausts poke through, but they found that the moisture coming out of the exhaust actually led to the bumpers rotting away. So on the revised version of the F-Type, they got rid of that. They deleted that particular feature. Some more roadside gems here. Cool, what a lineup we've got here. And in the foreground, an old Wolseley. Now, is that a 444? It could be the 1550. I can't quite see the little script badge on the front there, but yeah, it's a Wolseley. It's got the illuminated badge in the middle of the grille there, and there's a Daimler Conquest behind it. Now, 3 photos of a slightly tired looking Austin A95 Westminster. These were built from 56 through to 1959, and around 28,000 of these were built in all. They had a big 6-cylinder engine under the bonnet, 2.6 litre, 92 brake horsepower. There's a rear view of the same car. It doesn't look too bad, but it looks like it just needs a little bit of TLC. Like I say, these were built all the way up to 1959 when they were replaced by the Austin A99 Westminster, the Farina, the square cuts, the square rigged Farina designed cars. There's a front view of it. You can see it's missing the big deep chrome headlamp surrounds this particular car, so I wonder what happened to this. And apparently in Australia these are also available as the Morris Marshall. Some trim differences and bench front seat and so on, but yeah, a Morris version for Australia, which we never got here in the UK. Back to standards, and we've got, just driving past some nice old traffic lights there, is a Phase 2 standard Vanguard. The paintwork looks like it's receiving a little bit of work at the time of this photo in 1979. You can see the very distinctive notch back on this one, the separate boot area which differentiates it from the Phase 1 and the 1A. And back to Austin's again, we've got another example of an A95 Westminster. This one's in a metallic grey. I'm not sure if that's an original colour, I wouldn't have thought so. But it looks in slightly better condition than the other Westminster we saw a few moments ago, although it's very low at the back. It could just be the angle of the photograph, but maybe the rear springs are just sagging a little bit. And talking of sagging a little bit, we've got a nice old Ford here. Now at first I thought this was a Mark 1 console, but the little trim and the beading just at the front edge of the front wings there tells me that this is actually a Ford Zephyr 6 Mark 1 convertible. What a great old thing that is, and the caravan next to it's quite nifty as well. Another shot of a, well, probably pre-war, it could be just post-war, Austin. You can just about see that it's got a split rear window in this particular car and the larger headlamps. And this makes this an Austin 10 as opposed to the very similar Austin 8. And there's a Mark 1 van-based camper on the right-hand side there, Escort. Now, back to American cars briefly, and we've got a DeSoto here. This, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is a 1946 DeSoto Special Deluxe. Looks like a very original car, still earning its keep in the late 1970s in New Zealand, but what a great old thing that is. And back to Austin's, and another example of a super original but better than the previous ones we saw, Austin A40 Devon. They've got the charismatic droopy door handles, which these all seem to suffer with once they get into old age. But yeah, still in use, still looks like a good solid sound car, original grey paint. What a Bobby Dazzler that is. This one though is looking a little bit more tired. I'm not quite sure what the car in the background is, I'm sure you'll recognise that. People who know their American cars better than I. But yeah, another Austin A40 Devon. This one was up for sale apparently for $100 at the time. Clearly someone had been doing a little bit of work on the bodywork, but apparently by all accounts the interior was shot. And also for sale are 3 light commercials, but the one I'm particularly interested in is the one on the right, because that's a rare Austin A70 Hampshire based pickup. Now that's a rare old bird. You'd like to think that that one's still around, tucked away somewhere, but is it? And again, it's got the droopy Austin door handle. But much older now, we're going to vintage times briefly, and this is a late 1920s Ford Model A Roadster pickup, a bit like the one we saw earlier. And again, you can see how the folding roof is just over the driver and his mate, and you've got the pickup body at the back, so a bit of everything going on there. You could get a full steel cabbed pickup or one of those Roadster pickups. Now, Singers. Peter was a big fan of Singers, and he took many photos of them, and they will feature in the videos on this channel. This is a Singer Hunter. These were built from 1954 to 1956. This one looks like a really clean car. Actually, someone was clearly looking after this one. And there's another one, looking a little bit more time-worn, but you can see the vertical grille, the traditional shape grille, which was very different to the Singer SM 1500 that came before, that the Hunter was based on. That had a horizontal grille, but for the Hunter they actually reverted to a more traditional vertical Singer-style grille. And there's a rear three-quarter view of the same car. A little bit of tin worm just finding its way into the corners there. But quite advanced little cars, 1497cc overhead cam engine. That was really quite advanced for its time, and it was named after the Singer chairman apparently, the Hunter name. So that's quite interesting, but yeah, you don't see many of those at all. And there's another one, another green one. Those bonnets, they were starting out being made in fiberglass, but the quality just wasn't up to snuff, so in the end they actually used steel for the front bonnets. Why they switched to fiberglass, I'm not quite sure. Styling very, very reminiscent, I think, of the old Rover P4s as well, and still with suicide doors at the back. This photo is somewhat older, but I thought I'd include it here. It's another one of the Peters, and I got a great shot of an early F-Type Vauxhall Victor, again at a used car lot. What a great old picture that is. Anyway, that photo of a classic 1950s Vauxhall seen in New Zealand rounds out this collection of fantastic photos that Peter supplied. So again, my big thanks to Peter for sending those over. It's made, you know, for just a really, what I think is a really interesting collection of photographs, just of cars that have seen out and about and in regular use in the late 1970s and into the mid 1980s in New Zealand. So please take a look around the rest of the channel now you're finished here, and there'll be more videos along very, very soon. So bye for now.